Welcome to the Value Stuff Podcast. I am your host, Dan Glazier. I am a personal property appraiser and I value stuff for a living. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe and share so we can keep growing this podcast. And leave a great comment too. That always helps. So today I want to talk about stuff. This podcast here is called The Value of Stuff. And I want to talk about stuff, but I want to be frank today. And I want to talk about how most of our stuff, the stuff we own, stuff our parents own, our grandparents own, our uncles, aunts, our siblings, most of the stuff we all own or we're all personally involved in is worth very little or next to nothing. What do I mean by that? We tend to over-evaluate our own stuff. There's a phrase for this. It's called the endowment effect. What is the endowment effect? The endowment effect is when we over-evaluate monetarily the stuff we own because it's got some kind of personal connection to us or sentimental connection. It's the reason being is a lot of times it's stuff that we paid a lot of money for, or it's stuff we own ourselves and we take really good care of it. So we think it has more money than it actually has. It's the stuff that I usually see that would fall under this endowment effect are antiques and high-end furniture. People paid a lot of money for some really high-end, well-crafted furniture with great woods like mahogany and walnut and oaks, but they're not worth a lot in the marketplace these days. But people still think that they're worth a lot of money. Items like collectibles, Royal Daltons, Hummel figurines, glassware, cranberry glass, crystal, depression glass, carnival glass, it goes on and on and on. And this stuff just really does not have much value, but I still find a lot of people think it still does have value. Other items like your sports memorabilia, sports cards, coin collections, stamps collections, it goes on and on and on. Silver plated items. People think that these items have a lot of money because they've been well taken care of and they're personal to them. So that is what's called the endowment effect, is when we over monetize the value of items because there's a personal or attachment or sentimental attachment to them. And this is hereditary. A lot of times this stuff that we have has been passed down from our parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles. And they're telling us, don't ever sell this. It's only going to go up in value. Or do you know what this costs or what this is worth? In our minds, we think that. We all do it. I'm an appraiser. And this is what I do every day is put values on items. I've got a garage full of stuff that I've got to get rid of because I know I'm overvaluing it because it's personal to me. But the problem I see is the stuff starts owning us a little bit. What's the answer to be realistic on what our values are? I've come up with the answer because I do this all the time. I do this practically every week. I do this several times a month. It's a simple thing, and it's called a walkthrough appraisal. What's a walkthrough appraisal? So walkthrough appraisal is when you will hire an appraiser, someone like me, and they're not there to do a formal appraisal. They're there just to help you make decisions on all the stuff that we're inundated with, the stuff we have to downsize, especially if you're dealing with an estate, or maybe you have to downsize yourself, or you're downsizing, a loved one or a parent. Maybe you're putting them in a long-term care facility and you got all this stuff and there's all this emotional attachment to it. There's this, endowment effect on all this stuff. What you do is you hire an appraiser to do a walkthrough. And what is a walkthrough? Walkthrough is when appraisers such as myself will show up at the household and we'll go through the house with you of all the items. You'll point out all the items that you think are valuable. You should ask the appraiser, is there anything here you think has value? The appraiser is going to be frank with you. It's going to be honest with you. And it's going to say, yes, that's a beautifully crafted, solid mahogany bedroom suite, but unfortunately, nobody wants it. It's not worth thousands of dollars. It's only worth a few $100s. The reason I'm using that example, I just did this exact thing at an estate and I was there. This was a formal appraisal, but we had an informal conversation. I was in the primary bedroom. There was this well-crafted, solid mahogany, Georgian-style bedroom suite, handcrafted, made in Pennsylvania. He's like, Dan, this is going to be worth thousands of dollars. And I looked at him and I said, my appraisal is, I don't want you to be shocked, but it's going to be less than $500 for this whole suite. I mean the whole suite. Mirror dresser, armoire, bed, nightstands. That's just what this marketplace is. he has that endowment effect where he knows what his parents paid for it. He knows how hard his parents worked to get that stuff. So this endowment isn't just our stuff. It's also the stuff we inherited. Get the appraiser in to help you go through all the stuff. You're going to be shocked, more than likely, that most of the stuff in your household or most of the stuff you own or the stuff your parents owned is worth very little or next to nothing. On the other hand, there might also be some items there that you think doesn't have much value, but might have value. Now, I don't want to be all negative here to say, oh, wow, we have this whole household. Here's this appraiser guy telling us that it's probably worth nothing. I do find value also when we do these walkthroughs. I made a list here because I didn't want to leave this all negative and doom and gloomy. I want to leave some information with you so you also understand that it's the reverse of the endowment effect where people just think, none of the other stuff's any value, so there might not be any value. I got a list here of just things where I find the most value. Number one is, I always call them precious metals, but sterling silver or anything with silver content. Flatware, it could be tea sets, it could be serving pieces. People think that they're silver plate. Silver plate's worth almost nothing. Sterling silver can be worth hundreds, sometimes into thousands of dollars. Jewelry box. Often, I'm like, I'll ask at an estate, is there any jewelry you'd like me to appraise? They're like, no, mom only had some costume jewelry. And I always say, let me take a look at the jewelry box and I'll go through it. And numerous times I have found pieces in there because people don't realize that maybe their mom or their grandmother might have also inherited things from their grandparents or their siblings. There could be old wedding bands in there, and there could be some diamonds in there. There could be some quite valuable things. So quite often I find sometimes hundreds but thousands of dollars just in the jewelry box. Sterling silver and jewelry boxes, the two biggest places I find a lot of money. Original artwork, not your numbered prints. Your numbered prints could go on that list of where people think collected things forever, thought they were going to go up in value and they didn't. There's a lot of that endowment effect with numbered prints because, I find people think about what values were 20, 30 years ago. And there's just been this steady downturn of most values for a lot of stuff. Coins, and when I talk about coins, it's not your bag of loose coins, but they're coins that have some kind of silver content. Once in a while we get lucky, I'll find a gold coin or two, but I don't want people to get caught up on coins. Just have the appraiser quickly go through the coins because coins most of the time have a lot less value than people think. Also, a lot of times my suggestion for coins, when you're hiring the appraiser to do a walkthrough, I will suggest a couple of coin dealers that you could just take it all to because they can go through it much more quickly than I can. I can do it fairly quick, fairly good at this, but a coin dealer is even better. Same with stamps. Loose stamps, forget it, loose stamps. If you can take them to a stamp dealer, maybe you get lucky. Stamps have come down so much in value, just to let people know. Sometimes there is value in there. Other things where I find a lot of value are mid-century modern. It's still hot. I know it seems to be cooling a little bit, but your teak, your rosewood, Scandinavian furniture and the accessories. Sometimes a cool lamp, cool side tables, some funky console stereo, but the Scandinavian stuff, your stuff from Denmark, Sweden, that type of stuff. That part of the world and that style, that mid-century modern style, that's where we find a lot of value. If you're looking at hockey cards or baseball cards or football cards, basketball cards, we want to go pre-80s if we can. That's after the 80s things started to be mass produced. There's always some cards, some exceptions for some of the rookie cards or different cards that are old, 1980 and up, but we want 90s and below, especially older, because sometimes I was shocked. I did an appraisal not too long ago. There were some very, very, very old hockey and baseball cards, bad, terrible conditions, 1s and 2s. Didn't think there's much value. Was actually shocked that there was value because they're very rare. I suggested they took them to one of the major auction houses. They took them in and they did quite well. So that's what I have for you today. I'm talking about most of our personal stuff that's close to us. We overevaluate it, and that is called the endowment effect. And you look it up if you want, but once you start getting your brain going and thinking about this, you'll start realizing maybe I am over evaluating this, or let's get an appraiser in to help us with this stuff. It'll help us make a decision. The appraiser is going to have some expertise. is also going to be unbiased and not emotional with this stuff. Remember, most of our stuff is worth nothing or close to nothing. Thank you very much. I hope this helps. The Value Stuff Podcast. Like, share, leave a great comment. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Dan Glazier, The Value Stuff.